Last month, you saw me unbox, build, and get a few initial pajama-clad rides on what is probably the most common modern mountain bike out on the trails today, the Specialized Stumpjumper EVO. This month, I'm going to try all 6 of the available geometry adjustments on the bike, but first, let's nerd out and check in on the suspension. As I always do, after publishing this first video about the Stumpjumper, I went through and read all of your comments, and I counted a ton of you mentioning that I should throw the Cascade Components suspension linkage on here. A couple years ago, Logan and I went down to Cascade Components, as they're only about an hour down the road from us, and they told us that this was the most popular bike for that linkage. Go figure. I dropped the Cascade crew an email, and they were kind enough to give me a link to use in this video. Now, before we try all 6 of the bike's geometry adjustments, let's find out if this Cascade Components link upgrade actually makes the bike ride $257 better. Let's find out. So I'm gonna grab some water here. It's like 34 degrees out here where I live in the Pacific Northwest. It's fully winter, and I've got the best possible winter gear on. I've got warm shirt underneath my jersey. I've got a neck warmer, super warm gloves, and I'm honestly sweating substantially even with this best possible gear on. I end up needing to drink just as much water this time of the year as when it gets warmer out. And one thing I've done to stretch my bottles out a lot further is put an electrolyte supplement in there. I've been lucky enough to partner with the folks over at Element, that's LMNT, and I've really enjoyed this stuff. Element's a really simple electrolyte supplement with magnesium, potassium, sodium, a tiny bit of stevia extract. Makes for a really tasty drink, and I've noticed that I not only sleep way better after the ride, but I get a lot more mental clarity while I'm riding, I make fewer mistakes, and I end up riding a little bit better for a little bit longer. For a limited time, all of you here on my channel can get a free sample pack of Element with any purchase from their website, as long as you hit the link that I've got here in my description below. It's drinkelement.com/Jeff, J-E-F-F. Big thanks to Element for their support. I've been drinking this stuff for over a year now, and I've been really enjoying it. I think you guys might all like it too. Give this stuff a try. I've been riding the Stumpy EVO for about a month and a half, and I just threw on, last night, this bright orange Cascade Components rear link. The bike's still set up dual 29-inch wheels. I have not messed with the headset adjust. I have not messed with the chainstay adjust. So right now we're just gonna focus in on how this link actually feels. Okay, let's drop in and have some fun. Logan and I did a whole video where we first checked out a couple of Cascade links back in maybe 2 summers ago or something. I'll link to that in a YouTube card in the corner. But first, what does a Cascade link do? It actually creates a bit higher of an initial leverage, which makes it feel softer to the rider because you got more leverage against the shock. And then it brings it down to almost the stock amount at the end of the travel. The theory is you can put a little bit more air in your shock, and then it'll feel stiffer at the bottom while way plusher at the top. So I was stoked to have this link on this bike specifically for the North Shore, because when it's this wet and damp, traction is at an all-time low. And when you have a little bit softer initial stroke in your suspension, you end up getting a little bit more traction. The whole idea of suspension is that if you have a slipper or whatever, there's some give, some forgiveness. It'll eat that up and not necessarily kick you right off the trail. So we've made things softer at the top of the travel. It does indeed make the rear wheel just a little bit more glued to the ground. And when it's been raining nonstop for a day or two, you want all the extra traction you can get, so that's a nice little combo. The other cool thing about swapping to one of these links, you can get quite a bit more end stroke ramp. What that means is it gets more progressive. It gets firmer as you get deeper into the travel. When I first rode this bike with the stock shock, stock configuration, no volume reducers, I could bottom it out pretty easily as soon as the trail was going faster than like 15-ish miles an hour. So it was a pretty linear bike. And when a big company makes a bike like this, they want to make it pretty linear so that when Bobby goes and buys one of these, he's able to get full travel and use all the travel he paid for. And then when Susie, who's actually a way faster, gnarlier rider than Bobby, when she gets one of these and she wants to send it and notices it's bottoming too easy, she's got the experience to know she can get that $25, $30 volume reduction kit and spend all of about 8 minutes swapping those into her shock and making the bike perform quite a bit better. If you're like Bobby, you're probably gonna get along pretty well with the stock setup, and you can change it if you want. If you're like Susie, it's pretty easy to bump things up and make it more progressive. Now the volume reduction, in my opinion, is more noticeable than the link change. It's also cheaper. For less than about 30 bucks or so, you can get one of these volume reduction kits. I've got a link to these over at Jensen USA in the YouTube description down below. Anything you purchase from Jensen will help support my channel. I like the Link. I've noticed the traction is indeed a little bit better. The 170 fork, I'm not supposed to like it because it's bigger than the stock setup, whatever. It's been working really well. For faster trails, I wouldn't mind more damping, but for here right now where we're not going all that fast, that stock Z1 is working really well. Since filming this, I've had the chance to ride this linkage a bit more in my hometown where the trails are a bit faster and flowier and jumpier than these North Shore trails. And you know what? Getting some more air pressure in that rear shock, I really like this setup. It feels quite balanced with that 170 mil travel fork up front. I don't bottom out quite as easily, and combined with that volume reducer, I'm pretty darn happy with the way this bike rides, which is awesome, especially considering its price point. If you haven't yet, scroll down, hit that little red subscribe button, and then once you do that, we'll go try some new setups. All right, thanks everyone. I'll see you in the next part of the video. The Stumpjumper EVO has a total of 6 geometry adjustments. The bike comes with a different headset insert that can adjust the head tube angle plus or minus 1 degree. In addition to that, there's 2 other adjustments. There is a high and a low bottom bracket setting back on the chainstay. So today we're gonna try all 6 possible configurations for the Stumpjumper EVO on a really fun little test track we have here in town. I'm curious to see exactly how these changes affect the handling of this bike, and I have a hunch that we're gonna notice the head tube angle a lot more than the chainstay adjust, but we're here to find out. Now, one important thing to note, the way I've been riding this bike for the last couple months here, I've kept it at the 0 degree, the neutral headset insert. That's because I wanted to just see how the stock geometry felt. I've also left it in the high position and back here. I'll talk more about how the bike feels in regards to the geometry changes. Let's get after it. Run 1, neutral geo, longer chainstay. Having a harder time manualing. Right away, I noticed that it was harder to get the front wheel off the ground with a little bit longer back end. I don't know how much I'm truly noticing the height of the bike. Oh, it jumps pretty nice with the long chainstay. Interesting. It's harder to get the front end up. When it's up, it's harder to balance. However, when it comes to cornering, man, it did feel nice. I wasn't expecting that longer back end to feel good in the turns, but it really did. And then on the little natural popper jumps, the slightly longer back end, lower bike, it actually jumped a bit better. There's more of a difference than I was anticipating. So I like the low setup for that faster stuff. Now we're gonna throw on the headset. I think we'll do the 1 degree steeper positioning and see how that feels with this low/long rear configuration. So this is easily trail side adjustable. You just gotta bring your park 3-way and then a headset cup. Some spare spacers in case you lose them. So I've never actually adjusted this, but I did put the bike together. Shit, we're gonna need that. This is a 20 mil spacer and a 10 mil. I'm running 30 mils of spacer underneath my stem. You just kind of pull on it, your fingers, and it comes right out. So that's 1 degree slacker, and this is 1 degree steeper. You can see the headset cup has these little flat bits on the sides that interface with the actual frame to make sure that it is straight. Just push it on in there, something like that. For reference, this is the first headset cup I was using. There is no offset in any which way, and since it's totally round, it doesn't have any of those flats to line it up because it doesn't matter about being lined up because it's a perfect circle. The one we just put in there is offset to one end, so it needs to be lined up so you don't offset yourself out into the woods. It won't be offset down the trail or up the trail, depending on which direction you're going. All right, steep head tube. Has anyone actually done this to their Stumpjumper? Ooh. It actually feels kind of nice. Wonder if I want a longer reach and I don't even know it. I totally just learned something with the steeper head tube angle. So this first bit of trail is pretty fast, but not all that steeply down. And it was distinctly easier to pop off of things. And the bike felt easier to get off the ground and definitely more playful with that steeper head angle. Oh, that doesn't feel as good when it's going down the hill though. Whew. Doesn't corner as good, that's for sure. Jumps nicer, doesn't corner as good. Interesting. If I had a flatter trail network, I would definitely consider going to the steeper head tube angle. Once it dropped in and got steeper, I lost a bit of confidence on the faster drop section. And through the turns, there was more weight on the front wheel, which was kind of awkward. I have a more modern riding style where I stand up a lot and I lean the bike over in turns. So So for me, a steeper head tube angle corner is significantly worse than a slacker one where I can just like lean it over and carve. Coming up the hill at the end, everyone's always curious about climbing performance. It was fine, not a huge difference from the regular neutral setting. It's a ½ degree. Maybe it was a touch easier on the climb up, but not a different world by any means. All right, now we're gonna reverse this thing to the slack position, and we're gonna try -1 degree with the long and low configuration and back. Pull this cup out, rotate it around. Now we're at -1. Now we gotta futz it in place, so that wasn't too bad. Get all our stuff lined up, press back down. Okay, let's tighten this up. The famous Stumpjumper EVO configuration. Long and low with a slack head angle. Here we go, test number 1. Huh. It almost feels a little lazy. That was definitely a pretty slack bike. I am running the 170 fork up front, so I'm already kind of pushing things a little from stock. Wow, I would like to adjust the suspension to best get my money's worth with this setup. Whoa, it does corner much more aggressively. Still jumps okay. Did jump better, steeper. Gets through the rough a little easier on the climb. It definitely felt like a rocket ship. In terms of cornering on the tighter stuff, I like to lean the bike and it responded much better in that position than it did with the steep head angle, but it lost kind of the fun factor. I was trying to jump off the things. I'm gonna leave it in the slack and I'm gonna put it in the different rear end setting in the high bottom bracket, short rear end configuration, and we'll see how that changes things. I'm kind of optimistic. That might be the sweet spot, so we'll keep going through all the things, but I want a bike that gets off the ground easily, predictably, snaps into a manual easily, it's fun to balance, not a huge chore, and that I can corner the way I want to over the back wheel, just leaning it down and carving it. That's what I really want, so we're almost there. Let's keep trying this. So we're gonna put this in, little slot, and then these have little thingies on them, and then the thingy fits into the thing. Tighten it. Snug that up. Tighten this down. That's not too bad. Just a little bit of work. I think that's actually easier to change than the headset. All right, so now we got high bottom bracket, short back end with a slack head tube angle. This might be my Goldilocks setup, maybe not. Let's find out. Oh, there we go. I kind of like that responsive back end. Oh, clunk. Thus far, that's probably my favorite setup, the short back end with the slack head tube angle. Nice. But I noticed something kind of interesting with this setup. There we go. This setup is my favorite so far. I love how you can just get the front end up so easily. Don't notice much in the different geometry when climbing them. I'm gonna get a sip of element here before I dive into this. Watermelon, quite fruity. Basically along the lines of geometry changes how you ride the bike, and then suspension changes how the bike's gonna feel. So in my case, that felt really good. I could get up on the back wheel predictably. For jumping and stuff, it was nice. I could get it in the air real easily. And then at speed and stuff, it felt basically fine. I wouldn't mind having just more support, a little bit more damping, both front and rear, but especially in back. And I wouldn't mind having a little bit more air pressure, maybe some more volume reduction, something like that. So this is just one phase of dialing your bike and getting your geometry sorted. Once you have that figured out, then you can work on your suspension. And maybe you'll have to come back to geometry after you get your suspension dialed in. Maybe you want to try something else, who knows? But I'm definitely noticing that that's a good setup, and I'm looking forward to trying some different shocks and forks. And who knows, maybe we'll even try a mullet setup if I drink the Kool-Aid, so we'll see. Maybe I can find some Kool-Aid somewhere. If you have any, let me know. We just did -1 degree. I'm gonna flip this thing around to the +1, line it kind of up, get it in there, find its happy home. I'm gonna tighten this all up. This is gonna be the twitchiest possible scenario. Ooh. I do kind of like how that steep angle feels and it's not a steep trail. Okay, I definitely like that short back end. Whoa. hard to predict with the steep head angle. Phew! So running the steep headset with the higher bottom bracket, shorter back end, that was kind of like the king of sketchy. The bike did change direction really easily. Sometimes it changed direction when I didn't really want it to. I don't have a great example, but I had to put more input into the bike than I wanted to just get it to go down the trail straight. Okay, so mixed bag. Definitely a mixed bag there. Okay. Doesn't corner as wonderfully with that steeper head angle. There's too much weight on the front wheel for my preference. It was fine on the jumps, and with the little wheelies and stuff up top, it was good. Great setup for like less mountainous regions. Like if I was riding Santos or Alafaya in Florida, 100% I would do a steeper angle and probably a few other little things. Not a huge fan of it for the more aggressive parts of this trail. We just made the swap back over to the 0 degree neutral headset cup, and we're running the high bottom bracket short chainstay configuration. This is the setup I've had on the bike since I pretty much put it together off the get-go. So this will complete our tests of the 6. And then after this, I might put it in my favorite setting and we'll carry on with our merry way. Let's get after it. Yeah, there it is. So running the same setup I've had for the last like month and a half on this bike for that final run, kind of helped put everything in perspective. Woo! There it is. I really do like this configuration. Yeah, it's not quite as poppy as the steeper head angle, but it's not bad. The shorter back end feels great. It's not quite as fast as the longer one, but I'm not in a hurry. I'm all about the fun, the safety, all that. This configuration does work really well. There we go. It does feel pretty good. Jump's pretty good, corner's pretty good. Nice. I do like that setup. I want to spend some more time with the slack -1. I also want to drop the fork down to 160 to be closer to stock, but I honestly like this setup. I definitely learned a little bit. I learned that if I had less mountainous terrain, that slightly steeper head angle would be actually really fun. I learned that that longer back end would be killer if I was going to like Whistler Bike Park and wanted to ride this little trail bike. That would be sweet. If I wanted to like go racing, I would probably do the longer back end. But for regular riding, this setup is definitely on the money. I think this is a cool way to have an adjustable bike too. It's not gimmicky at all. There's definitely legit use cases for the headset and the 2 back end differences. I like the way they did that. Just doing the different shock mount holes doesn't usually work as well, in my opinion, as this a little bit more dialed approach. Big thanks to Element for their support. I've been drinking it all day. This stuff is good. And thanks to Logan for filming. Thanks to all of you for watching. If you're shopping for a Stumpjumper EVO, I'll drop a link to Jensen USA in the description down below. Thanks to Industry 9, these wheels are running sweet, and I will see you guys in the comments also just down below. Thanks everyone, peace.